Right, so I barely ever ask this in any of my videos, but if you could do me a huge favour and hit the like button to help to spread this message to as many people as possible, I would greatly appreciate it, because the message behind this video is so important to chronic illness recovery. So thank you so much guys, and I really hope you enjoy the video. In my opinion, one of the biggest mistakes that the vast majority of those suffering with a chronic ailment make is that from the moment that they first start to experience abnormal symptoms within their body, and then they go on to receive a label in the form of a diagnosis, straight away they put themselves in a completely separate category from the people who they deem to be fit and healthy. Psychologically, what this does is it gives you the impression that you'll never be able to live a quality of life anywhere near up to the same standards as these people. Whereas what I believe to be a far better outlook is to think to yourself, if any fit person is capable of becoming chronically unwell, then surely any chronically unwell person is capable of regaining their fitness. Instead of seeing chronic illness like an ultimatum, I'm sick, they're well, they'll always have perfect levels of health, and I'll always suffer with debilitating symptoms, start to see it like a scale where both people are on the same scale, just at different ends of it. And importantly to note, both people have the potential of moving up or down the scale at any given moment. Okay, let's put that thought to the side for a second, because what I really want to bring to the forefront is the discussion of how people actually become chronically unwell in the first place, and why some people become chronically unwell whilst others are able to avoid that outcome. So I could use a number of natural disasters as an analogy here. Earthquakes, hurricanes, but for the purpose of this video, I'm just going to go with tsunamis. So imagine a major tsunami hits the coastline of a big city. What would you expect to find once the wave had eventually cleared and everything else had settled down? You'd probably observe that some buildings remained structurally sound and intact, whilst others had been completely wiped out to the point where they were virtually unrecognisable. And of course, it goes without saying that the more developed the city is, the less impactful the effects of the tsunami will end up being. Now, in terms of the human body, if we were to substitute out the tsunami and the buildings and substitute in traumas and neuronal networks, this really offers us a good insight as to why some people are more or less fortunate when it actually comes to developing a chronic condition. The equation that sums all of this up really well is the amount or severity of traumas suffered plus the degree of instability currently existing within neuronal networks. Because you have to imagine this as if our body is a coastal city where the traumas that we face throughout our lives represent the natural disasters that are continuously wreaking havoc on the city, and the integrity of our neuronal circuitry represents the quality of buildings existing within that city. Now the thing is, traumas more often than not are completely unavoidable. So in this scenario, whether we're aware of it or not, the only thing that we actually have conscious control over that can both protect us from developing a chronic condition in the first place and help us to recover from one is the integrity of our inbuilt neuronal networks. So if you were to have had instabilities present without knowing it in parts of your nervous system, whether that be central or peripherally in origin, that means that you most likely would have been predisposed to developing a chronic condition. It just would have taken some particular event to tip your body over the edge into becoming symptomatic. This is also the reason why person A, who might be given a particular medication, for example, suffers tons of extreme discomfort and long-term health consequences. Yet person B, who took that exact same medication, experienced virtually zero negative effects from it. Regardless of if it's a certain medication, an infection, a stressful event, a concussion, the loss of a loved one, a breakup, whatever it might be, what's important isn't necessarily the event or the substance ingested itself, but it's how well equipped our nervous system is to be able to actually handle the blow. Because what will end up happening is that any areas of weakness will ultimately be exposed, and as a result, the functional ability of these particular areas will be heavily compromised moving forwards. It's a little bit like if you were to sit on a wooden chair and one of its legs had been completely hollowed out by termites. You instinctively know which of those 4 legs would be the first one to break. Well, a similar situation happens deep within our neuronal networks when we face a trauma. The problem is that it's far more difficult for us to actually be able to identify the location of the dysfunction. And that's why I put so much effort and time into building the Unbeatable Blueprint online course. Because after learning this for myself, I noticed that there weren't any concise resources available informing sufferers of how they could locate these hidden dysfunctions and the exact steps they actually had to take in order to resolve them. What I want to talk about in this second half of the video more relates to the title specifically, and what that is that we want to try to change our perception from thinking our bodies are inherently broken to instead shifting our mindset to thinking that our bodies are just working in a different, less optimal and less efficient way. So when these instabilities start to arise within our neuronal networks, what ends up happening is that we take away the function of a pathway that was designed by our evolution to fulfill a very specific purpose to do with our physiology. However, in order to keep us alive and functional, our body still has to carry out these specific tasks to make sure a number of variables are kept finely balanced and constantly on the move. This could be altering our breathing patterns to ensure our blood is kept at a very precise pH level, altering our blood pressure to ensure enough blood is delivered to our brain at all times, altering the motility of our gastrointestinal tract to prevent us from developing an infection, and those are just a few examples. These unconscious and automatic processes are all 100% totally non-negotiable, meaning that our body will always continue to carry them out regardless of the circumstances. Otherwise, we'd be very fortunate to survive for any longer than a single day. However, oftentimes a body carrying out these processes in the presence of a significant nervous system lesion or dysfunction will end up producing an array of undesirable effects for the host, which is you, which will typically come in the form of chronic and debilitating daily symptoms. And the reason for this is because your body will be forced into making a ton of adaptations internally. And then the unfortunate reality is that the more you attempt to push your body by engaging in normal daily activities that the vast majority of humans take for granted, the more you unintentionally disrupt this stress system even further, causing the symptoms to hit you even harder. I think a great way to envisage this is to see a fit and healthy body like a road junction, and a symptomatic body like a road junction with roadworks and a 3-way traffic light system currently in place. Now, in the case of an acute illness, these roadworks and traffic lights are temporary. However, for somebody who's chronically symptomatic, with notable dysfunctions present within their neural networks, these roadworks and traffic lights become a permanent feature. And because these dysfunctions are dormant and never addressed, the main consequence is that the way they're left causes them to operate hugely inefficiently from the way that they were originally designed to operate. And whilst these inefficient road junctions can still technically function, just like how somebody with a compromised nervous system can still function to some degree, the whole process is nowhere near as straightforward and effective as it should be. Fortunately for us though, our brain and our neural networks have the potential of learning and forming new connections through the process of neuroplasticity. And if we are able to execute this in the right way, then we can actually start to remove some of these metaphorical roadworks and traffic lights and free up some of the function of these compromised pathways that exist deep within our bodies. And if I go full circle with what I was talking about towards the start of this video, this is also how we can start to rebuild our cities with structurally sound buildings, so that we can best position ourselves with strong and resilient bodies in the face of a future natural disaster or trauma. The hardest part in all of this though is undoubtedly knowing where the dysfunction actually lies within your neural networks, which is why I'm such a big advocate for having the function of your brain and nervous system thoroughly assessed. Because once you're able to pinpoint the precise receptor or pathway that isn't performing up to the standards that it should be, you can introduce very tailored neurological exercises to actually start to strengthen the signaling from that particular region. And the knock-on effects of doing this is that you should gradually inherit a body that runs far more efficiently, expels far less energy, and is far less symptomatic. And the type of practitioner who helped me personally to achieve this was a board-certified chiropractic neurologist. So if you are somebody living with a condition like POTS, dysautonomia, CFS-ME, long COVID, post-concussion syndrome, fibromyalgia, or chronic digestive issues, and you experience a whole host of daily and debilitating symptoms, try to hold on to the hope that your body isn't permanently broken. These symptoms are just an unfortunate byproduct of a body that's being forced to work differently. And really all it's trying to do is to serve you as best it can, given its current circumstances.